And so what we're going to do is we're going to study what's heaven like. Not what books say, not what movies say, not what we've heard, not what we might unconsciously think, but what does God say heaven's like? Are you ready? Open your notes and let's jump in together. Why study heaven? I want to give you 3 compelling reasons. Reason number 1 is our misconceptions are crippling us. We have some false thinking, some misconceptions about heaven. For example, we have a misconception. We think we can't know much about heaven. It's mysterious. It's all just about, floating clouds. And people will quote a verse in 1 Corinthians 2 that says, "Eye hasn't seen or ear heard or entered into the heart of man all the good that God has stored up for those who love him." And they say, you can't know what's going to happen. In the name of that song, you can only imagine. Now, let me tell you for sure, you can only imagine because it's way beyond what we could comprehend. But the very next verse in context says, "But we have the mind of Christ." And actually, the Bible is very clear about what heaven is, but I will tell you it's different than most of us think it is. Another misconception is that it's an otherworldliness. It's these disembodied spirits floating around, playing harps in eternity, sort of earning our wings. There's angels. Every movie, you can never see people's feet. There's always the fog machines going on, and there's floating clouds, and people are in white, and it's ethereal. And I don't know about you, but part of that sounds attractive for a half hour, or maybe 45 minutes, or I think worship pastors are going to love it. But if heaven, misconception number 3, is one very, very, very long church service, it might be really boring. I actually have read in a book where a pastor, a Bible-believing pastor, actually confided in another pastor, "You know what, if it's just one really long church service, I want to be with Jesus and I want my sins forgiven, but I'm not sure I just want to actually go to heaven." I've talked to people when they're young and we talk about the return of Christ or what would happen if you died. I've had people say, "I don't want Jesus to come back until I get married. I haven't even had sex yet." Or I've talked to an elderly couple who were 2 or 3, years away from this big moment. They're going to go to Hawaii. "I don't want Jesus to come back because we haven't even gone to Hawaii yet." In other words, we don't know what heaven's like, but it can't be better than marriage, sex, or Hawaii. I mean, that's kind of a limited view, don't you think? Those misconceptions then lead to some predictable results. One, we have a very temporal perspective instead of an eternal perspective. There's a reason why the church, the old word used to be worldly. We live for the now. The first 2 millennium of the church, heaven was a central topic. Teaching was paramount about heaven and hell and judgment and clarity and what it would be like. And in the last 100 years, as I'll share in a minute, there's been very little teaching on heaven, let alone the new heaven and the new earth. Second is, since we don't know what heaven's like, we don't study it much, we don't think about it much. I mean, when I meet people that have cancer, when I talk to people with debilitating diseases, when I go into third world countries where situations are very, very difficult, they actually think a lot about heaven. Most of us don't. Heaven holds very little hope or peace or that longing for home. You know that sense that for some of you that travel, and you've been on planes in different countries and, you finally get home and like you lay in your own bed for one night and you get up the next morning and go, "It is so good to be home." Multiply that infinitely. That's what heaven's going to be like.